So here we are. This is Baruch Fleischman, and not to forget that this is the hardcover copy of the Jewish Astrology, Cosmic Science. So Rabbi Yaakov is over here, and after we went through the concepts of the first house, the seventh house, and the 10th house, let me see if I can find my place. Here we are. Seventh house and the fourth house. Now we're moving on. He says, sometimes I find myself drawing horoscopes. Let me see if I got this. Here we go. From all over the world, and so I have to look where they fall in the globe. Now, I'm not sure that I understand this because I don't do a lot of horoscopes, but he says, and sometimes you will see that there is not a square aspect between 1 and 10. So I think that what he means to say is that the distortion in the chart, so that you don't see that 1 and 10 are actually in the 1 is a little bigger than it should be. So, for example, or 10 is going to be shorter or longer than it was. So therefore, it'll take more than 30 degrees. So let's see what. So if there is not a square aspect, if there is a sextile aspect, so you could say that now you're going to be between 1 and it'd be, in other words, instead of a 90-degree chart, it'll be a 60-degree chart. Instead, like between Aquarius, if you had, say, like this, say, what's the distance between Aquarius is 30, either 30 and 30 is 60, and then you get to Aries. So now you have a different kind of relationship. It's not a square. He said, and that would make it more difficult for the child. Why? Because there would be more harmony, because Aries, which is a fire sign, get along quite well with Aquarius, which is an air sign. So therefore there's going to be more harmony between the parents and the child, and that would make it more difficult for the child to separate himself from the parents. And that may not be so good, he says. My teacher used to say, you like the squares where squares should be. In other words, everything is good within its own context. Everything is good in its own context, and once one must realize that each thing has a time and a place. So there's a place and time for the squares in order for the child to have the push to get out of the home. Another secret of the zodiac is if you look at the horoscope of Adam and Eve, and you see another secret of that there are squares between the 4th and the 10th houses, which represent the mother and the father of the bride with the groom, which is the 7th house. So we had said previously that the 4th house represents the mother and the 10th house represents the father. Now in between that, the groom will be the 7th house. It'll be the opposite. Because in many marriages, there are major problems between the parents and the in-laws, who sometimes help in marriages, but in many cases they break up marriages. And you see that in the horoscope of Adam and Eve, by looking at the aspect between 10 and 1 and 4, that is the 10, 1, 4, and 7 and 7 and 10 and 7, you see the lack of harmony between the in-laws and the married couples. You see there's no harmony. There's a problem there. So he said, in the Jewish law, it is always said that you should listen to your parents, but the only time you don't have to listen to them is on the matter of getting married. He said, because your parents have a different view from your own about what you need. The person that you really need to marry may not be somebody that your parents could get along with. And this is the case where you go more after your own feelings than after what your parents say. So he said, we have so far talked about the angular houses. The angular houses, once again, these are different words. Angular is the same kind of idea as square. So the 1st, 4th, 7th, and 10th, which are houses which are not in harmony with each other. He says, now let us talk about the succeeding houses. Succeedent. The succeeding houses are going to be the houses after the 1st, 4th, 7th, and 10th, which would be the 2nd house, the 5th house, the 8th house, and the 11th house. So let's take out our sample drawing here, and we say this is the 2nd house. So this is going to be, so we're going to count for the 2nd house, and we're going to start going this way around the circle. Let's see how he does it. So this is another way to square the circle. The first houses, 1, 4, 7, and 10, were called cardinal signs. So he has to explain to what is a cardinal sign. Now, if you read books on astrology, you'll see this word come out. Cardinal signs are by nature the strongest signs. Cardinal signs are goal-oriented, but the succeeding signs has come from the fixed signs, which are, so he didn't mention what are the cardinal signs, so we'll get into that. But here he says the succeeding houses. He comes from the second, the fifth, the eighth, and the 11th, which are the next set of houses, using the same principle of the squares from fixed signs Taurus, Leo, Scorpio, and Aquarius. They are also 90 degrees from each other, so that's another way of looking at this and see how it works together. So instead of starting with the first house, going to the 10th house, and then the 7th house, and the 4th house, now you're going to go from the second house, the 5th, the 8th, and the 11th. That's how it works. And it's easy to remember because a 90-degree aspect will always exist between different elements. That is, fire doesn't go along with air, fire and air, water and earth. Between those four basic elements of reality, there's always a square. And also remember that in the 90-degree aspect, it is always between one sign that is masculine and one sign that is feminine. I think I mentioned that in yesterday's shir. He says, for example, if you take an aspect of Aries, let's say fire and earth, Aries is masculine, Capricorn is feminine. If you take Taurus and Leo, Taurus would be feminine and Leo is masculine. There is always the aspect of male and female which complement and also nullify each other. Aries is masculine, and the sign to its left is Pisces, which is feminine. And the sign to its right is Taurus, and that's also feminine. Both Pisces and Taurus are feminine. All this is, as we have said, because there is a huge difference between the genders, and they have a hard time trying to understand one another. And as it is said in the Talmud, it is God that holds the man and the woman together like a miracle. And I think what it means is that it is not always so natural for them to stay together. It is hard for them to have common goals in life, and they don't think alike or behave similarly. So we're saying like this, they have the opposites, or squares, don't really match. They're not harmony. There's no harmony there. So now he says like this. So you look at the second house. Let's go to the second house. In this particular case, the second house is Scorpio. That's the house of Scorpio. Let me show it to you. So he's a Libra. The next house is going to be Scorpio. So let's see what is it. So he says, so if you have a second house, it would fulfill itself 10 houses away. So what's 10 houses away from Scorpio? 10 houses away from Scorpio is going to be Leo. Right? 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10. And he writes, so he says, in other words, the money, that if the money is the second house, brings you friends, which is the 11th house. Friends are usually from the same socioeconomic strata. You don't often see poor people together with very rich friends, and they are usually from the same class of people. Now, with 11th house being the cause of the 8th house, now the 11th house, so start from the 11th house, and this is the 11th house. In this case, it's Leo. Count again, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10. You come to Aries. Okay, excuse me, you come to Taurus. So Taurus, in this particular phrase, are usually from the same socioeconomic strata. Let's see, he said, now the 11th house being the cause of the 8th house. So I have a problem with understanding how this works, he writes, since it's a hard transition. But I will tell you that what I have heard regarding this is this. The 11th house, say it is a cold sign. Let's just say that. Like, for example, it's the house of Aquarius or wintertime signs, which are like Aquarius or Capricorn. For example, Mr. Obama, now I've seen other things about this. I thought that Obama is a Taurus ascendant, but he says that Mr. Obama, the President of the United States, at the time he wrote this, has Aquarius for his ascendant. And he comes across with little emotions because Aquarius is a cold sign. He is like a professor, a school teacher teaching school children. He doesn't come across as feeling any emotions inside himself. The goal of the Aquarius is always to become a Scorpio. Now, this is very, very interesting. Aquarius is well, let's take Aquarius. Here's Aquarius. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10 is Scorpio. So Aquarius wants to always be a Scorpio. Now, why does Aquarius want to be a Scorpio? We have to always become a Scorpio to become emotionally involved. Because Scorpio is full of emotions, all the under-the-table emotions, all the feelings, all the sexual drives, everything he sees and everything around him, he or she, all the time. And yet the Aquarius loves freedom. So Scorpio is the opposite of that. Scorpio wants to be controlling, to control the emotions, but Aquarius is air and wants to be free, do what he wants. And because of that, he is very afraid of emotional attachments, because freedom means that you can't get involved, because emotional attachments take away freedom. So Aquarius craves to become Scorpio, even though it is difficult, and yet that becomes their goal in life. Now, Scorpio and Aquarius don't go together at all. But Scorpio can see Aquarius has a vision to be able to see what he needs, which is feeling, because he doesn't have a lot of it. It's a very analytic sign. And I think the Scorpio is the most emotional intense sign. I think this is no good. This is what the cool Aquarius craves. That's the shear today. This is Baruch Fleischman, Tikkun, Elevator, Kollel.